What's going on, duelists? It's your boy Nick, bringing you today on the channel for the first time my take on branded Dracotail for the post Doom of Dimensions format and the post September 2025 ban list. For those of you new to the channel, welcome. My name is Nick. We do Yu-Gi-Oh content mainly focused around rogue and casual decks alike. If that's the kind of Yu-Gi-Oh that you're interested in, then I highly encourage you to smash that subscribe button. We are currently working our way to 3,000 subscribers, and I need your help to get there. There'll also be a link in the description down below for the Discord for the channel. It is absolutely free to join. Make sure that you do so you can get some insider sneak peek info on some of the stuff that I'm going to be bringing to the channel in the future. So with the intro out of the way, Branded is a deck that I have brought to the channel before. However, this is the first time that I'm not playing the deck pure. I'm utilizing the new Dracotail cards, which did come out of the Justice Hunter side set. And it wasn't until we got the support, the Dracotail support from Doom of Dimensions specifically, where Dracotail Frixel, the new main deck monster they have, I think finally gives Dracotail branded the push that it needed, because now Dracotail has a light spellcaster monster in engine that synergizes extremely well with the branded cards. And I just wanted to build this deck because A, I think branded and the lore behind it is incredible. And B, the Dracotail variant is, in my opinion, just super fun to play. Maybe, you could argue in the comments whether or not it's the most competitive. This is a 60 card build of the deck, so I already know off the bat some of you duelists are gonna shrug it off and say it's not competitive. But to be fair, because you would prefer to play a smaller deck count, but I've just been having such a blast with the 60 card version. And at the end of the day, that's what this channel prides itself on. This channel specifically covers decks that are rogue, and or off the beaten path. And I think this deck fits under that category quite well. I mean, is it the most competitive version of branded Dracotail? Most likely not, but it is for sure the most fun. And like I said, it was just the perfect deck that I felt bringing to the channel. It was just a match made in heaven as far as I was concerned, especially with the new cards. So we are going to dive into the 60 card Dracotail branded deck list. Of course, you know how we always do here. We start with the monster lineup first. So as we have here, 3 copies of Fallen of Albaz. Obviously, it goes without introduction. I think playing 3 copies of this card is absolutely mandatory. He's just the whole heart and soul of the strategy, so you need to play, 3 of these super Polyon legs effectively. Then we also have 3 copies of Aluber the Jester of Despia. So Aluber is basically, Albaz's archenemy, but Aluber here, we are playing a heavier branded package in this deck, so I felt like 3 Aluber just makes sense. So you do want to have, your normal summon, obviously, so you can search for your branded spell traps. So I think 3 and 3 for the purposes of the 60 card build is actually correct as far as ratios are concerned. Up next, we have 3 copies of Albion the Shrouded. This is basically your 4th, 5th, and 6th copy of Fallen of Albaz, as his name becomes Fallen of Albaz while on the field and graveyard. But effectively, he's basically like a Foolish Burial and an Upstart Goblin rolled into 1 card. He can, Foolish a branded spell trap from deck to grave, and then if this card was in your hand when that effect is activated, you can place him at the bottom and then draw a card. Additionally, if you send that branded spell trap from your hand, he can special summon himself from the hand or graveyard, which is also cool. So he's also like a pseudo extender for you. But I like playing this card at 3 copies, especially in a 60 card build, because you have the space to facilitate it, obviously. But yeah, this just gives you incredible grind game, and like I said, toolboxes your deck, gives you that free +1 that you might need for that extra push. Up next, we have 2 copies of Blazing Cartesia, followed by 1 copy of Guiding Quem the Virtuous. I think 2 and 1 is the perfect ratio here, even for a 60 card build. Cartesia just allowing you to quick fuse into pretty much anything, and then adding herself back to your hand every end phase is just insane value. You can get her off a fusion deployment, obviously. And then I think the 1 Quem is perfect for this build, because again, this is not a pure branded list, it's branded Dracotail. So adding the Dracotail cards does make the deck a little more, you add more normal summons basically, so I don't want to clog on too many normals. And honestly, in testing, I think the 1 Quem has worked perfectly fine for the purposes of this particular list. I haven't felt like I needed a second copy, but basically when she's always treated as a Dogmatica and Despia card, which is important to note. Unlike Cartesia, who basically, she could special herself if there's an Albaz in the graveyard, and then lets you quick effect, fusion summon. The Quem, upon normal or special, lets you send a Funnel of Albaz or a card that mentions it from deck to grave. So basically an archetypal Foolish Burial of sorts. And then while she's on the field, if a monster leaves the extra deck, doesn't matter how, she allows you to target a Funnel of Albaz or a monster that mentions it in grave and special summons it. So again, not really a starter necessarily. So as a one of, I think she's fine. And Cartesia is also in the same boat. I don't think you would max out on her either. Although she is good, by herself, she isn't a starter for you either. At least not in this build, in my opinion. So the 2-in-1 ratio work out perfectly. Continuing on, we do have one copy of Spriggan's Kit. We still choose to play the one kit, even though Branded Fusion is back at 2 copies now. And that's, again, mainly just for added consistency and also the ability to recover some of your banished branded spells and traps over the course of the game. And then we obviously have the 1 Tragedy and then the 1 copy of the Tri-Brigade Mercourier. I think the 1 Tragedy and 1 Mercourier still work fine. Again, even in a 60-card build, I haven't felt like I've needed more copies. If you're choosing to play Allure of Darkness, which a little bit of a spoiler, this deck is not. I think if you're going to play Allure of Darkness, you could increase the quantities of both Tragedy and Mercourier. That way you have good dark monsters to banish with Allure. But honestly, Allure, in my opinion, kind of just feels win more. Like, I feel like, yeah, you get draw power, but then you're also playing, like, these increased quantities of these cards, which I just feel adds to the bricky nature of this deck that it can have at times, especially with Dracotail as a supplementary engine. So I don't really want to be bricking on other stuff. I mean, as a 1-in-1, they're fine. Mercourier just being an archetypal hand trap, and then Tragedy just serving as, your 4th copy of Aluber and or Quem potentially, because this can search you any Despia card, which is important. Up next, the Bystials. We have 1 Lubellion. We are playing 3 copies of Saronir. Again, this is a 60-card build, so I feel like you have the space to be able to max out on Saronirs. And then we do have the 1 Bystial Magnamut to round out our Bystial package in the list. Wouldn't change anything about this. I think, it's incredible to me that Magnamut is still limited. This card is definitely ban-worthy, especially in a deck like this that can capitalize so hugely off of it. It just blows my mind that this card is still only at 1 and not just outright banned. But obviously you have Lubellion and then the 3 Saronirs. I think Saronir in this deck is custom. Especially whether you're playing pure branded or even branded Dracotail. I think 3 Saronir is just crazy. Like, not only does it serve as a functional, like an archetypal hand trap of sorts, but when it's sent to grave, just allowing you to Foolish any Bystial or branded spell trap is just huge. You can dump Retribution, so you can add Branded Fusion back. You can dump cards like Branded Opening, which prevents your fusions from being destroyed. Against the Lunalight matchup where they have Liger Dancer and they try to Raigeki your board. If you have an Opening in grave, it effectively accomplishes nothing. So I just think 3 Saronir, 1 Lubellion, 1 Magnamut are just perfect. I wouldn't really change those ratios out for anything. Up next now, like I mentioned before, this is a branded Dracotail variant, so we are playing the Dracotail cards, of course, and I'm choosing to run a larger Dracotail package than most. I think 3-5 mana is pretty much mandatory. I mean, she's basically just polymerization in hand trap form, which is just custom, especially since she doesn't hard lock you to Dracotail fusions. You can make any spellcaster or dragon. So like if you open 5 mana plus an Albaz and any other monster, you can get to your branded combo very easily. You don't always have to just settle for the Dracotail stuff. But her being a polymerization from the hand, and then if she's used as fusion material, allowing you to set Dracotail spells and traps from your deck to your field is just huge. Then we have 3 copies of Dracotail Malulu. Malulu being a dark dragon is huge, because that just is incredible for going second to make Lubellion the Searing Dragon plays. Off of Branded Fusion, because not only do you get to fuse for Mirror Jade, but then Malulu can also non-target negate a monster permanently, by the way, as well as setting a Dracotail spell trap. Dracotail basically is like the Cartesia of the Dracotail package. During the main phase, as a quick effect, he allows you to fusion summon into a Dracotail fusion specifically by using monsters from your hand or field as the material. This is why we choose to max out on the Malulu, because in certain instances, Malulu is a good normal summon. If that's all you have, if you didn't have access to like Aluber or something, Malulu can also get you to combo depending, at least the Dracotail combo, depending on how you opened. And then obviously we do play the 1 brand new Frixel. Frixel is just incredible for this deck. Again, being a light spellcaster is huge because it gives you even further bridges off of Branded Fusion, because now you can make cards like Albion the Branded Dragon by dumping in Albaz and Frixel, because Frixel's a light. You can also even go into Sanctifier, because Frixel is a light spellcaster specifically, and then when Frixel is sent to grave as material, allowing you to set a Dracotail spell trap. A little bit of a spoiler, all the Dracotails do that. I know most of you duelists watching this probably already know, but for those of you who are unfamiliar with Dracotail, pretty much all the archetypal monsters, when they're sent to grave as fusion material, will let you set a Dracotail spell trap. And then the Dragon Dracotail specifically give you, they let you set a spell trap, and then on top of that give you an additional benefit as well. But Frixel here is a spellcaster, and then when she's normal or special summoned, you can target a Dracotail in grave except yourself, special summon it, and then you can bounce a monster you control to the hand. Could even be the monster you revived, or it could be the Frixel itself, just depends on what you need at any given point. Then we have one copy of Lucius. This is where I think my package differs from other people playing Branded Dracotail, because I've seen people either not play this at all, or they max out on this. And I think if you're going to play a normal summon in the Dracotail line, I think that card is going to be Malulu, because it doesn't get punished as hard by hand traps. Like if you go Lucius and it gets ashed or ashed, imperm, veilered, well, I guess mainly imperm, veiler, and you don't have like a way to quick fuse, like because you don't have Cartesia, don't have Famena, it just feels pretty bad because Lucius just loses a lot of the value there. Whereas at least in Malulu's case, if it does get like impermed or veilered, you can at least try to fuse on their turn because it is a quick effect, right? So like it trades better into those types of disruptions. But I think the one Lucius is perfectly fine. Obviously, we do play Cat2, which searches it, which we'll talk more about when we get to the spells. But I think one Lucius is more than enough. Basically, the Stratos of the Dracotail package, upon normal or special, add a Dracotail monster from deck to hand. And then if you send to grave as fusion material, you can set a Dracotail spell and spell or trap. And then to round out the last Dracotail main deck name is one copy of Urgula. Again, just like Malulu as a Dragon Dracotail, it lets you set a spell trap, but in this case, the additional benefit here is that it can non-target pop a spell trap on the field, which is crazy. And then it also has a really good graveyard effect, allowing it to place itself in the bottom and then add any spellcaster Dracotail engraved back to your hand. So the one Urgula is nice. Finally giving Branded some in-engine ways to out-back row is huge, because that was one of the things I felt pure Branded always struggled with. And then the last monster line that we play in the main deck is just 3 copies of Fua. Pretty self-explanatory here. Fua is just an incredible hand trap this format. Now moving into the spells, obviously we play the 2 Branded Fusion, newly semi-limited off the list. Branded Fusion is just the heart and soul of this deck. It is absolutely incredible when it resolves. And now, honestly, that's another reason why I think Dracotail is so good in Branded, because it used to just be in pure Branded. If this got ashed, you were pretty down bad, depending on your hand. But now, because the Dracotails can effectively pick up some of the slack, you're not so worried when this card gets stopped, because you have your Dracotails to fall back on, and those cards can give you so much extension and increase the ceiling so much that you really don't care as much when this gets stopped. Obviously, it's still annoying, but again, you having like Rahu, Ketu's, and other ways to fusion summon now really makes it so that your reliance on this card resolving isn't as needed, in my honest opinion. But obviously, we're going to play the 2 copies, because if it does resolve, you're effectively winning the duel. So 2 Branded Fusion is obviously mandatory now moving forward. Then we do play 3 copies of Opening. This is basically just emergency teleport for Aluber or Quem in some cases, and then has an amazing grave effect, which says if your fusion monsters would be destroyed by a card effect, you can banish this instead. So it just prevents your fusions from being nuked by stuff like Raigeki, or like I said, the Liger Dancer, or in the Mitsurugi matchup when they revive the Ritual. I'm drawing a blank on its name, but the Ritual also tries to Raigeki your board as well. So having Openings in grave is huge. We have 2 copies of High Spirits. You could play 3 of this, especially in 60, but as crazy as it sounds, I just couldn't find a space for a 3rd. And to be fair, now that we have 2 Branded Fusions, I feel like you kind of don't need 3 High Spirits now, because High Spirits used to be your way to play around Ash. But because, again, you're playing Dracotail, and this isn't a pure Branded list, I feel like you can cut down on this, maybe even cut it to 1, but I don't know if I'm ready for that yet. At 2 copies, it's been perfect for me in testing. But yeah, this card overall has been really clean, and I don't have any other complaints as far as High Spirits is concerned. Then we have 1 copy of Branded in Red, 1 Branded in White, because again, this is a 60 card variant, and Branded in White is nice in certain lines. Once you kind of get your graveyard established. Branded in white can be just as powerful as Branded Fusion is, in all seriousness. And then obviously Branded in red is just another way for you to fusion summon, except it's a quick play, so this is a good card to set off Albion, the Branded Dragon effect. And then obviously we have one copy of Lost. No need to explain that. That's pretty much a mainstay in any Branded build. There is argument to play multiple Lost, but if you draw Lost with no way to fuse, this card is just the biggest brick. So I just feel like playing one is more than fine, especially since even if it gets outed, you can recover it. You have like Despian Tragedy graveyard effect, as well as Branded Retribution to get this back to your hand. So I think having one is completely fine. We do have 3 fusion deployment though. This is basically Eteli for Cartesia or Albaz, depending on what you need at that given moment. So that's obviously very strong. And then moving into the Dracotail spells, we have 3 Ketu, 3 Rahu. Ketu being a Rhoda for any Dracotail monster, and then when you're going second, if your opponent controls a monster, also being a polymerization is just crazy. And then Rahu is basically Branded Fusion 2.0. This lets you fusion summon any Dracotail from the extra deck by using material from hand, deck, or field. So just having an additional like pseudo branded fusion of the deck is just that much more crazy. And that's why I said like cards like Ash Blossom don't really hinder you as much anymore, because you just have other like things that are going to require your opponent to Ash at this point. Like if they're trying to hold the Ash or branded fusion, you know, you can go like Ketu for Lucius, Lucius for Fimena, fusion summon, then set the Rahu, Rahu for an Arthur. And like if they're still holding Ash, like how much value have you gotten already at that point? You know what I mean? So it just seems like kind of counterproductive for your opponent to try to hold Ash specifically for Branded Fusion now. Because with the Dracotails, especially with the large number that I'm playing, you can easily cycle into a full Dracotail engine and package before you even commit the Branded Fusion. And then your opponent's just sitting there looking kind of silly because they chose to hold it, their Ash in their hand. So, but obviously we do still play 3 copies of Thrust because we are going to get ashed inevitably at some point, and we just want to punish our opponent for doing that to us. And then we also play the 1 Talents, and then because this is a 60 card variant, we're also on 1 copy of Grasslix Greener as well. So that's going to round out the spell lineup for the deck. Now moving into the traps, of which there are only 4 that we main deck. We are on 1 copy of Dracotail Flame, 1 copy of the brand new Dracotail Sting from Doom of Dimensions. These 2 cards are crazy. This is an archetypal spell negate, and Dracotail Sting is basically DD Crow, except it can hit both monsters and spell traps, which I think is really, really cool. We finally have a Dracotail card that like you can activate, and it doesn't feel situational, because cards like Dracotail Horn, you know, they can only go after attack position monsters, which your opponent can easily play around by just summoning everything in defense, right? Obviously, Flame, you know, there's always going to be some kind of spell card to negate. Every deck plays spells, so this is always kind of like a mainstay. But in my opinion, I think Sting is a lot more useful than playing Horn now moving forward, because now you just have a way to disrupt the grave, and obviously every deck is going to set up a graveyard at some point, even if it's their non-engine. Like, you know, like even a deck that doesn't have a graveyard-like strategy, if they're playing Canine, like when they dump the Lupus now, they try to Lupus and like bring him out of the grave, you can Sting it. For example, like I just feel like there's so many applications where Sting comes up, and especially since like you're not tied to needing an attack position monster to target or tied to needing a spell to activate. This is just a card that, as long as there's at least 1 card in your opponent's grave, is always live. So even if you need to use this to like chain a Gulamel, for example, I think is just incredible. So 1 Flame, 1 Sting in the main, and then we also play 1 copy of Fusion Duplication, mainly just as a thrust target. So when our Branded Fusion does inevitably get ashed, we can just go Thrust for Fusion Dupe, and then Fusion Dupe the Branded Fusion on their turn, and then, like I said, it just makes them look silly. And then for the last card in the 60 card deck is just 1 copy of Branded Retribution. So that wraps up the 60 card main deck. Like I mentioned, the deck is obviously insanely powerful. Now we're going to be diving headfirst into the extra deck, of which we are playing 2 copies of Dracotail Artholion and 1 copy of Dracotail Gulamel. This is my ratio for the fusions because we're playing such a high number of Dracotails in the main deck. I think 2 Arthur, 1 Gulamel is perfect. You know, Arthur just on fusion summon bouncing cards from field or grave back to the hand, up to the number of material used from the hand is just a custom effect. You're either using this to out your opponent's threats, or you're just recycling all the material that you used to fuse into this. Or in Branded's case, you can also use Arthur to cycle backs your branded fusion monsters like your Titaniclads and your Albions. You know, there's just so much flexibility that you get off of this card. It's crazy. And then Gulamel just being a fusion, you can sit on the board and at least every turn it's guaranteed to pop at least one card, which is obviously really nice. That wraps up the Dracotail fusions themselves. Now moving into the branded fusions, we played 2 copies of Albion, the branded dragon, 1 Lubellion, 1 Mirajade, 1 Sanctifier. Let me see if I have space for all of them here. Might have to overlap a few. We have 1 Titaniclad and then 1 Rindbrum for the branded specific fusion monsters, or the Albaz specific ones at least. Obviously, 2 Albion goes without saying. He's basically the bread and butter for the strategy, the one you're always going into off branded fusion like 90% of the time. Him allowing you to fusion summon a second time is crazy, and then his grave effect is obviously quite useful. Then we have 1 Lubellion, the Searing Dragon, again, going second because we play Mululu in the main deck. You can go branded fusion for Albaz Mululu to make Lubellion, and then use the Mululu to chain block Lubellion effect while also negating a card on the board in the process, non-target. And then obviously you had the 1 Mirajade. Sanctifier, I think, even though we're not playing the Edo lock, is still relevant because of Frixel specifically. If it wasn't for Frixel, I probably wouldn't be playing Sanctifier, honestly, especially because, again, we're not on the Edo lock. Just for personal preference, I'm just not really a fan of that line. I feel like this deck is one of those decks that encourages, like, it promotes interaction, and you take all of that away by playing cards like the Edo lock. Like, what fun is it? Like, I want to interact with my opponent and fusion summon and chain stuff and, like, try to break apart their board, and, you know, that's fun for me, right? Like, I just don't want to sit behind a floodgate that the opponent can't out and they're just passing turn. You know what I mean? Like, if you want to do that, go play Stun. Like, I just want to play like a really cool fusion dragon spellcaster deck, and this checks all the boxes. So, but yeah, Albion, because of the existence of Frixel, I think is needed now moving forward, because Frixel being a light spellcaster, you like, especially lines under Fuelos, if you go branded fusion and they Fua, you can just go into Albion, give them 1 draw, set up, you know, Albaz Frixel to set like any Dracotail spell trap, and just like, you know, you can go like Ketu, add Lucius, normal summon Lucius, add 5 mana, and just pass. And they've only gotten 1 draw off of Fua off of you, and you're already set up because you have Albaz Engrave, Sanctifier on the field, you have 5 mana in the hand. Like, there's no need to overcommit now into cards like Fua. And Albion also helps you play, prevent you from losing to evenly matched, because if they're going to try to evenly you, they're just going to go battle phase. And then when they do that, you can just Sanctify or put a monster on their board, and now you don't lose to evenly at least. So that's obviously a plus. But this rounds out the Albaz specific fusions we play in the extra deck. Titaniclad is nice because this is also your out to the Lagro Dancer as well, which is obviously a problem for a lot of decks this format. But moving on, we have 1 copy of Grand Guganol the Dust Dragon, 1 Despian Quietus. Then we're on 1 Secretarian Dragon, because obviously, you know, we still need something for the Dracotails to make if we're not going to be going into like Arthalion or Gulamel. I think Secretarian is huge in this deck because of its generic material, and its effect is also kind of like a pseudo Sanctifier in a way. Just gives you incredible grind game, and into the mirror match, it's also a pretty good floodgate as well. And then we have 1 copy of Chaos Star Source, and then 1 copy of Guardian Chimera, and this rounds out our 15 card extra deck suite. Very, very powerful fusion extra deck. I think you're just playing some of the best cards the game has to offer, and I just absolutely love that about branded Dracotail. Now moving into the side deck, of course, is always up to personal preference. You know, take everything I'm showing you with a grain of salt. Tailor your side deck for your own personal needs. But for the sideboard, I'm choosing to play 3 copies of Fantastical Dragon Phantasme. Not only is he a dark dragon, helps you prevent targeting, but he's also just a really free extender for you and gives you that extra draw power, so you can draw into those crazy power spells and power cards you need access to be able to break your opponent's board. We are also side decking 1 copy of Dracotail Pan. Obviously, you know, the branded side of the deck doesn't really need help outing monsters. We have so many ways, like, for monster removal, but there are just some of those matchups where you just need that additional pop, and having Pan in the side provides that for you, especially when you're going second. Because Pan's not too great going first, outside of just setting a Dracotail name, a Dracotail spell trap, which, again, all of your other fusion material does anyway. But I think sometimes for going second, siding into Pan is nice. Just having that additional way to break the board is always useful. Then we play 3 copies of Herald of the Abyss. This realistically is for just decks that set up like a towers. I'm thinking, you know, Lunalight specifically. If they get to Liger Dancer, that's obviously annoying to out, especially in engine for you. So I think having like searchable thrust targets like this are useful. But in all seriousness, I think this card just ends up getting replaced post the branded structure deck that's coming out at the end of October with the new the Fallen and the Virtuous quick play spell that was revealed in that structure deck, because that card is just absolutely incredible. So I think like within a month's time, when that structure deck gets its TCG release, these 3 copies of Herald probably just become 3 copies of that new spell. But for the time being, I guess this is my solution for the Lunalight matchup at least. Then we're also playing 3 copies of Dark Ruler. You know, again, just another searchable thrust target, you know, being able to blanket negate your opponent's board, and then you can go off, hopefully unhindered, and try to establish your field is always good. Then we do play the 1 Duster, again, for those just random back row matchups you come across. Kind of a bit of spice here. I'm choosing to sideboard 3 copies of Dragon's Mind. This was a new counter trap that came out of Alliance Insight. And I think Branded is a deck that can take full advantage of this. If you're going first, you know, Solemn Judgment just went to 1, but this effectively replaces that card. It just says when a spell or trap or monster effect is activated, while you control a monster with 2500 original attack or defense, which, newsflash, that's basically your entire extra deck, you negate the activation, and if you do, destroy that card. And then additionally, if this card's in your grave, you can pay 2500 life to set this card back to your field, but banish it when it leaves. So you get like 2 uses out of this. And I just think for going first, it's just crazy. Like, this insulates you from just about everything else you would be losing to, ideally. Everything short of a Kaiju, pretty much. So I felt like, you know, playing 3 of that on the side has been helpful, especially when going first, post game 1. And then the last card on the side is the 1 Dracotail Horn. So we are playing all 3 Dracotail traps post-Doom. It's just that we choose to side deck the Horn. Horn, again, is situational in my honest opinion, but there are matchups that I think Horn is good into. I'm thinking like Yummy, where they normal summon a name and you can bounce it, and if they don't have a way to extend, they're usually just passing turn. You can also Horn more reactively by like using Horn to out your own monsters. Obviously situational, but it is something that has come up in testing. So I think playing Horn in the side is perfectly fine. Again, it's obviously searchable within your engine, so you can just side it in for going first, and then you have just all 3 traps, you know, Flame, Horn, Sting. Or you can side out the Flame or side out the Sting for this. Just depends on what the matchup calls for, obviously. But that's going to wrap up my take on branded Dracotail for the post-Doom of Dimensions format. Let me know down in the comments below what you duelists think of this 60-card deck profile. Also, if you all want to see combos and test hands, chime down in the comments below. Try to get this video to, I'll keep it simple, get this video to 25 likes, and I'll bring you duelist the combos and test hands for this deck. Obviously, you know, I'm playing a larger Dracotail package than most, but I've just been having a great time with this deck, all things considered. It's been really, really fun in testing, and, you know, again, it's not the most competitive version, because, again, some of the ratios might be a little questionable to some of you duelists, and obviously it's a 60 card. But again, I didn't want to build the most competitive version. I just wanted to build what I would think is the most fun. And this just happens to be it. I mean, it checks all the boxes for me personally. You know, it's just a very powerful fusion deck that basically can play indefinitely with the amount of grind game and recursion it has. So yeah, so like I said, let me know what you duelists thought down below. Like, comment, subscribe if you haven't already. And stay tuned. Again, I'm going to be bringing you duelists more content. Expect a combos and test hands video for my recently updated Psychic profile that I went X1 with at 2 separate locals, as well as an update to Dinomorphia that I want to bring to the channel post Doom of Dimensions and post ban list. So stay tuned. I'm going to have a lot of content coming down the pipeline. Make sure you join the Discord link below. Again, I'm always posting pictures and images of stuff and asking some of you duelists for opinions on certain cards. So I'm just trying to build a little bit of a community there. And yeah, with that being said, this is Nick, hitting that end phase. Peace.